I just say a little bit. This is hosted by the Natick Historical Society, which was founded in 1870. And today we remain an independent nonprofit that receives no public funds. We thrive on the support of our community, our donors, and support financially, but also support of people who attend programs like this. And we're very happy to have you here. So we thank you in every way possible, which is what we're doing here tonight. So with that in mind, it's my pleasure to introduce Karol Bartlett. She's a librarian with more than 36 years of experience helping people find and use all types of information resources. Her many interests include history, genealogy, popular culture, cooking, gardening, writing, and working with her backyard woodpile. I am intrigued by that. If her face seems familiar, Karol just retired from the Morse Institute Library after 21 years of faithful service. That means she's had the opportunity to watch a whole generation of Natick children grow up before her eyes, and a whole generation of Natick adults grow older before her eyes as part of that institution so central to our community. So Karol, my pleasure to welcome you. Thank you very much, and I turn this over to you.
All right. Well, I may just talk a little bit here, just to say thank you for inviting me. I have Fran Wise to credit with getting me on board to come and do this program. I believe during a genealogy meetup this past summer, she asked me if I would be interested in doing something for the Historical Society in the fall, and I said yes, but that was before I decided I might be redirecting in what I was doing. But thank you again for inviting me. First and foremost, I want to say that the Natick Historical Newspaper Archive is very much we are very fortunate to have that within the Natick community, because with local newspapers, they are the best thing to offer the local voice to a researcher, to the person living down the block, to yourself who may want to read about what your neighbor's doing, about what the town government's doing, about, at a time it might have been important to know who was playing whist with who at whose house, as much as it might be to know, was that apple cider distillery or apple cider mill really apple cider, or was it something else? There's a number of little things that you can find in a local paper. And in some ways, the local paper now that you get is very different than what you got in the day. And what's wonderful thing about the Natick Historical Database is that there is so much information that you can find for a number of years. Let me just share my screen here. And okay, well, let me just start with back in October, I think October of 2020, I was doing a little research work on the microfilm for Natick Bulletin. Patron had asked about voting habits of women back in before women got a chance for the first year that the women had a chance to vote. And what would have been really nice is an index where I could have looked up a word voting or women or, right to vote or anything, but we didn't have such a thing at the library for the Natick Bulletin on microfilm. Nothing was ever created. And so the way that I had to research something like that was literally go, sort of ballpark an idea of what time period, ballpark in my brain keywords that might identify what I was looking for, and then start scanning each page for what I might be looking for. And after a while, after a number of years of scanning older issues of the Natick Bulletin or Natick Tab or whatever variation of title it had at the time, I got pretty good at knowing where I would find a particular thing. Obviously, a lot of people ask for obituaries, but sometimes you wouldn't find an obituary. You would find like a little death notice in amongst the column of local news. So if anybody's familiar with Sherlock Holmes, and especially the PBS Sherlock Holmes stuff, he is often seen reading the London Times and always saying that the best stuff can be found in those little columns. That's where life happens. And it's very, very true. So anyway, going back to October, the community relations staff person, Jane Ellen Newman, came up and she said she was sort of bouncing around looking for a project. And I looked at her cross-eyed and I said, find some money to get this stuff digitized. And so she was able to find a grant for us. And so between Mutual One Charitable Foundation and the Morse Institute Library trustees, we were able to fund this Natick Historical Digital Archive of all these old Natick papers. And the nice thing about it too was for the first part from I think it's the earliest part is 1876 up to 1976, all of that coverage is remotely available to anyone throughout the country or whoever can access it from different points. And I'll show you those things in a second for free, no charge, no library card needed. You can look at it. But due to copyright, 1977 upwards, we had to make that only available at the library. And digital, if anybody's interested, I can share this link with Fran and she can make sure that it goes out to the people who might be interested. Advantage Archives is the company that we worked with to digitize our microfilm. And they have a wonderful blog here explaining exactly what that whole copyright nightmare can be and was. And while it may not be impactful for some of the period of time that you have to come to the library for, we just decided it was better safe than getting sued. So it's better for this amount of information to have to be looking at in the library. So I'm not a copyright specialist, but I would direct you to start by reading through the information on this page, because I think they do a pretty good job of explaining how confusing it can be. So at the end of the program too, I want to show you where else you can find community archives that this company has created. Because sometimes if you're looking, like my family is mostly from Iowa, and it's nice to know that there are other newspaper collections digitally archived in Iowa that I can look at. So, so that's Advantage Archives. Now, the best way to get it is to go to the Natick Historical Society, or I should say one way, because there's obviously another way, but for Natick Historical Society, they have some wonderful research resources listed on their webpage, and it's Learn Natick History Research Resources, and each one of these has different components in it. But in terms of finding the link to the digital archive, you just hit on ancestry genealogy, and right down here is the historic Natick newspapers. And if you click on that, it'll take you right to the Morse Institute Library's webpage for the historical online newspapers. And what's better yet, it's specifically the page for the digital Natick Historic Archive. So you can see right here, this is the one 1856 to 1976 that you can get from anywhere. You know, if you're sitting in the park, have an internet connection, you can search. The digital archive from 77 to 2004, you have to, for this particular digital archive, you have to be in the library to search it. But there may be a way around it a little bit, and I can, I'll show you that if we have time. And again, you would just be able to get to most of these resources through the Morse Institute Library. But without further ado, I will just pop you into the one that we can access. The earlier stuff is always more interesting to me anyway. So for me, it's like, let's go. So the Natick Historical newspapers, once you pop into it, these are the specific papers that were digitized for the archive. The Natick Bulletin, Natick Suburban Press, Natick Herald, Natick Citizen, Suburban Press and Recorder, and the Suburban Free Press and the County Recorder. And under each one of those, you can see the year, how many pages. So it gives you a sense of, you know, what you may find. And some of the newspapers, every newspaper seems to cover different stuff, or they will cover it the same, but there's a little nuance of a difference. And sometimes some are better than others. But the main search for it is right up here, all of the words, and this is the time period. Now, just to start, I'm going to keep it really basic because A, I'm a basic kind of person. B, sometimes the best thing is just to play with it, keep it open, and not try to make it too specific, because dollars to donuts, the minute you try to make it, you start being really specific, you're going to miss a lot of things. And so that's why sometimes I keep it pretty general to start. So I will show you, they have all of the words. And if you hit this arrow, there's exact phrase, any of the words, none of the words. I haven't quite figured that out yet, but exact phrase looks for exact phrase. They've got to be in the same order. So for instance, if I look at, I'm going to just show you a search, Norma Millen. And I'm going to keep it broad-based, 1856 through 1976, because I just want to show you a couple filters once we get in. So right now, what this has done is, obviously you see, everyone can see my cursor okay? You can see the results start going, right down the page here, and they give you, I think, about 10 at a time. And I'm just going to scroll up here. In most databases, when you search, you get results. You can usually order those results in chronological order. With this database, it's a little different. You can't do the results in chronological order, but you can filter them by decade, by year, or by newspaper. So in this case, I am looking for Norma Millen, who married a gangster. She was the Congregational Church's minister's daughter, and she eloped with a gangster. And so 1934 looks probably to be the case. She was, I believe, just graduated from Natick High. So when you first see the results, you can see they're a little bit garbled, and that's the way it was digitized. So to see the whole goods, if you will, what you do is you click on Natick Bulletin, and it will give you the newspaper, the whole newspaper. And then you just scan. So for right now, let me just move a box here. It will highlight, hang on a second. I wanted to see if I can make this any bigger for people. I'm missing my navigators to be able to do that. Okay. You can see what it does is highlight your search terms in blue. So in this case, it's missing Natick girl sought, eloped with man, police want to question in the Needham murders. There's a bank robbery in Needham at that main bank in downtown that you can still see the alarm box on the side of it. And I believe 2 or 3 policemen were killed. And that's the guy she married. But the Reverend Norman Brighton, her father, who is pastor of St. James Christian Church, I was wrong, of Roxbury, visited state police headquarters at the State House Sunday for information concerning his 19-year-old daughter, who he says is a very nice girl, depending on which article you're looking at. But say that's exactly what I was looking for my research project. What you can do now, let me just move a little box here. Right at the top, the home will always take you back to that first page, and you can start your search again. These lines will take you, by pressing these lines, it'll take you back to the page with all those results listed on it. This is another way to search on this particular page for different content you might be looking for. If you wanted to download the whole page of the newspaper, you would do it by pressing this button here. If you need to have this page bigger or smaller, you can see what you do is just click those buttons. And if I wanted to copy this page or copy that just that article, all I would do is click the crop, and you get this little white box, and you move that over to where you want to crop the article from. And you say, oh my God, I can't go any farther. So what you do is you just with your mouse, you move down and you just keep extending the box however long the article is. And once you're all set, you press the arrow. And what it does is generate a JPEG for you. Now, when you get this on 8x10 paper, 8x11 by paper, it may be awfully tiny small because you're going to get exactly what the article looks like here. But say you wanted to write a note, or actually I can write a note right here. Norma Millen, sorry. And then you could write, if we wanted to say, for instance, say you're the Historical Society and this was a vertical file, you may want to type in crime, Natick, especially if you can spell correctly, Natick, Millen, Norma. And you could just keep putting, or you could put a more lengthy paragraph of description there. And then all you do from here, if you want, you can print it. You can also download it. But if you press next, this will say add another tag. So if I wanted to add another tag, oh, let's say I forgot one. Let me see, Robert, oh, Needham Bank robbery. Hope I spelled that right. Okay, so when it prints out for you, it's going to give you the citation, Natick Bulletin published in Natick, Massachusetts, and the date, which is always nice, and it will give you these tags as well. So, okay, and no, we're good here. If you wanted to say, add a filter, sometimes by adding a filter, it improves the contrast of the print quality of the newspaper. Sometimes not, you know, it's totally up to you. Once you decide on what you want to do, you just press next. And this is the way it's going to look on the paper here. And I'm just going to print this for a second and then see if I can make this box any bigger. No, I can't. Well, anyway, if this is how it's going to look when you print it out at home or wherever you're printing it, it's going to give you all those tags at the top, and then it's going to give you the title of the paper found in the Community History Archive where it was found, and then Norma Millen and all the different tags and all the citations. So it's kind of handy to be able to get all that information. Likewise, if you wanted to just likewise, you can download it to your desktop and it will download it as a JPEG, and then you can upload it to whatever you happen to be writing. If you have a research folder that you're working with, that's another option. But if you were the Historical Society and say this day in Natick history, you could share it with Facebook. And that's always a nice thing too. So those are just a few of the things that you can do. And that was a very sort of a brief run through of possibilities. But I wanted to I've got a couple of other searches here, but I also just want to show you what you can get with the papers. Obviously, it digitized the whole paper. And if you were just looking to browse what, you know, maybe somebody's birthday fell on February 23rd, 1934. Maybe they were, maybe that's the day they were born. You could go through the paper. It'll load every page for you. And you can just sort of, there's a finance committee meeting. These are usually the obituaries. They appear on different pages, but you can also see what was happening at the St. George Theater. I think the grocery ads are always kind of fun to look at. Here's the Colonial. There was a nice stick up at the Colonial that in the 1930s too. That was, you can find information on, but nice car. But it can be hilarious, some of the things you found. my colleague and I, when I was at the library, we did a virtual program called Everything Pies. And it was all about pies, Pies. And what she was able to find was a ton of recipes from the Natick Bulletin from I think the 40s and the 50s, all pie recipes. And in the 50s, especially the 40s and 50s, you started to see a lot more women's columns where there was recipe sharing, women club meeting notes. So there were a lot of different information pieces that you could find. But I'm just gonna pop home, and we're gonna try all of the words just to show you. 4th of July is always a good one because I never know how it's gonna come up. Is it gonna be FORUTH? Now, but because we're looking for all the words, it may show us July, if you can see here, July, 4th of July. So it's a little more generic, and you're gonna have to scan a little bit more for what you're looking for. You may find nothing to do with 4th of July, but you might find everything to do with July. So that's why that the more, sometimes if you're looking for the name of a person like John Sterrett, you would say John Sterrett. Morse Institute Library, you would put Morse Institute Library. Natick Historical Society, why don't we try Natick Historical Society and see what comes up? We're going to try exact phrase. And this one's from 1933. But again, we can slide over, and there's evidently in 1880. What did they got to say in 1880? About the Historical Society, South, I always forget about the South, and I do apologize. South Natick Historical Society. We can just see what they had to say. And we're gonna pop this up a little bit because even sketches from Natick, I think that's where I saw those. Hang on a second. Okay. This iron has been preserved by the Woodworths, and the son, the subject of the sketch, has placed it for future preservation among the collections in the South Natick Historical Society. So let me see. What does that say? The varied and interesting career of Charles Woodworth, events of half a century ago. So, I mean, you'll never know what you're going to find. It's pretty good information. What I would do at this point is I would open it up for questions, because it's all well and good for me to show you some basic functionality of how it works, how you can find it, how you can get into it. But sometimes the best thing is when you start to play with it yourself and do some searches. But I would love to hear questions or searches somebody might like me to try, or clarify points I've made, because there's a lot. That chat box sounds awful quiet. But we're just gonna let me just show you a couple other things, as long as we're quiet for just a second.
We have a couple of questions here.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
What happened to Norma Millen?
So Norma Millen was eventually all of the gang of the guys that she was with, she got arrested, and she got put through the courthouse and through a trial and everything. But the gang, the Brighton gang, basically said she had nothing to do with it. She didn't know anything. And so she was eventually found not guilty and released. And that's kind of the last appearance I recall seeing about her. But there is a wonderful book that came out maybe, 7 years ago. And the title escapes me right now. But if you did, the title escapes me right now, but I will try to find that out, and I will send it to anybody interested in Norma. It's Norma Millen Brighton. It was her quote unquote married name. And I don't recall at this point what happened to the members of the gang, but it was really interesting. Let me see.
There's a question.
Great.
Could you do a search on the arrival of the Albanian immigrants?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I would say, can the person who asked me about that, are there any particular subjects around would it have been, is there a time period, is a year, or this is what I would do at the library is when it's a great question. And then I would probe for, is there a particular person you were looking for? Is there a particular time period that is, dollars to donor relevant to early 20th century arrival? Okay. Well, we're going to just try, we'll just try Albanian. Oh, we'll see what that shows up. No guarantees. So yeah, this is where I know I need to.
Excuse me, Carol,
Yeah.
can you truncate so you could pick up immigrants or immigration? Is there a way to truncate?
Well, let's see. Is that truncate? It's been a while.
That's what I used to use, yes.
Okay. Oh, thank you, Ruth Ann. That was Ruth Ann, I think. So thank you.
Nancy.
Nancy, thank you. Voices. Well, something. What does this one say? I know this is 1973, but I'm going to look at it anyway just to see what it says. Okay. Move my box. Oh, recipes from, okay.
We also
That's
had a
not-
question
yeah.
about the hurricane of 1938 in Natick. I bet that has broad interest appeal. If after you've explored this, you might try that one.
I'm going to pop over to hurricane because I have to do a little more thinking about the Albanian immigrant. I think it's a wonderful possibility. And the person in the chat room, if you could maybe just float me a note as to who that was, I might be able to do a little search for them and see what else I can find. There is another resource. This is the librarian in me. There is another resource that was done on the Natick Albanian community, and it's from the Mass Memories Project, which both the Historical Society and the library did back in 2006 or 7. It was before Paula Polk passed away. So if you don't mind hanging after the main presentation, I will gladly share that website for you because it's got interviews with Albanian, some of the original Albanian families in Natick. So it might be a really good resource for you. But so back to the hurricane of 1938, since we know it was 1938, we could actually pop up to 1930 to 1938.
Mm.
It was September or well, we'll go August. And actually, can I make that any? No, that's the decade. That's the year. Decade, year, and we'll go to December. And now we will see what we can find. See if I got lucky. No, I didn't get lucky. So I have something wrong in my why can't I remember what when it came off the coast? Was it October? Anybody know?
Don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, you know something? Then we're going to leave it broad-based.
Somebody said September.
Okay, so I should have caught them up. Okay. We'll broad base it.
your end search is still August 31st instead of December.
Thank you. That's why many eyes are so helpful, and why I always say that I am not the best. I am not an expert, and this is still saying that. We will do it just like that then. Yay! Thank you for whoever saw that last date was wrong. So we've got October, recovery from Hurricane Gala all-day program. Okay. I'm just trying to find, something. Let me just go back here for a second and see if they give me a monthly breakdown. No, they don't. They just give me a year. That's, I'll tell you, there's just a couple of nuances that are a drag with this, and that is one of the things that's a drag for me is that not being able to date order the exact results, if you will. So I'm just going to scan. Well, let's see what this one is. Ooh, man, that's big. I guess I gotta pop it down. All right, there you go. Hurricane leaves havoc. 400 homes damaged. Electric lights out. Highways blocked. Woo. And this goes on to give you lots of coverage. It looks like it's continued on page 4. Let's see what's on page 4. The other drag about the digitization is because it was digitized from microfilm. The microfilm was black and white. So what you see in terms of the photographs, they look like you would get in microfilm. Like if you were printing out this image in microfilm, you'd see it would be just as is. So the reason I bring this up is you see these enticingly many photos. Oops, wrong page. Come on. Okay, you see all these enticing pictures here. If the microfilm had been in color when it was done in the day, these images would be much better. That said, it's still going to be from newsprint. And just like any reproduction, it's, every time you make a copy of it, it gets a little blacker, gets a little blacker, gets a little blacker. So, there are some nuances, but it's still so much better than microfilm. That's for sure. I'm getting lots of great resources. This is a great resource. Was there an electric trolley that went to South Natick? I am not an expert with South Natick history, but that's a great question for the Historical Society. But in terms of turning that little question around and seeing if there's a, let me see, trolley schedule. They would have called it trolley, right?
Mm.
And we will just, something, we'll go back. And we'll go back to 1870. And we will. We'll go up to 1920. 1930, what the hey? No, okay, so they don't have a trolley. What it was, did I spell that wrong too, isn't it? Is it EY? Of course it is. Now, full disclaimer, I did say I was a librarian. I did not say I was a champion speller. So I have spells on occasion, but I'm not a champion speller. So I appreciate your patience and your politeness and not calling me a bad speller every time I made a bad spelling error. But here we go. So I got to say about the trolley. Let's see. Okay. Oh, from the hub to Gotham by steam tank. Okay, that's not necessarily about the Natick trolley, which makes me wonder if I need to. Oh, South Natick trolley line. Whew. Phew. There it is, 1920. So that at least tells us that. Okay, work was begun on Thursday to dig out the South Natick trolley line. The Natick trolley car leaving Framingham at 11:45, but this is the South Natick one. So if this is in March, it could have been, I'm not sure off the hand. I don't know if it existed in before 19, if they're just digging out the hole for the trolley to go in, or if there was a big massive snowstorm and they had to dig it out because it was stuck. I don't know. I think the trolley track crossed Charles River in the 1920s. So lots more detective work to be found, I think. So definitely take a look. But you know, I want to make sure to be respectful of our time because I know it's getting on to about 7:40. Let me show you just a couple of other places where you can get some historic newspaper information, as well as circumvent, if you can't get to the library, where else you can find local newspaper information. If you go to the homepage for the Morse Institute Library and you click on reading and research, reading and research, go to online research guides. And one of the first options you get to is under research guides. It happens to be highlighted right here, historical online newspapers. And what you get when you click on that, it'll take you to basically a guide to all things historical newspapers. So here are your Natick historical newspapers, the one of two that we just looked at. If you're looking for Natick newspapers after 2004, other papers, Wellesley, Metro West Boston. Now, these may not be historical, but at least they'll give you some, you know, like here's how historic Boston Globe. Give you some other papers back to about, it depends on when they were first digitized, but some of them go back about to 1976. Some of them only go to 2005. But if you're looking for other historical newspaper resources, there are more and more coming all the time. The Library of Congress Chronicling America is one of your best shots for finding historical newspapers from anywhere throughout the United States. Free Historic U.S. Newspapers by state. The one thing I wanted to show you, if you go back to Advantage Archives, if you were looking for other places that have collections of newspapers that were done by them, you can actually browse by state, by city, browse by title. I chose Charles City Press because I'm from Charles City, Iowa. And it's included in something called the Collection of Rockford, Iowa. Rockford and, you know, Charles City's about like right here. Rockford, and in the day, that's just not that far away. In Iowa, indeed, it's not that far away. But when you do a search for Collection of Rockford, Iowa, you get to the digital Rockford, Iowa, and here it is. And it tells you for me, these are important papers because, you know, I grew up with all these things. They don't have a lot for Charles City. They just have 1 year. Charles City's pretty tight with their wanting to hang on to their content. So I think you'd have to go to the library in Charles City to be able to look at the whole thing. But that's pretty much what I've got. And I am going to just stop share and bring it back to you, Mike. And also glad to offer any other things I can answer.
Thank you so much, Carol. I'm wondering for myself, if I were to go to the library, I'm intrigued by the ability to do this at home, but I'm also, as I see you do the searching, you can get stuck, you can get sidetracked, you can wander around. Would the librarians there be able to, at the Morse, be able to direct more? Are they, is that something set up on their computers there to help people with this kind of research to get started?
Yes, and to your point, at the library, the reference is open on the second floor, as it always has been. And there are when I left, it was set up in such a way that there's a circulation component and there's a reference component. The reference component, the staff are usually, if you're looking at the reference desk, the second floor desk, they're usually on the left-hand side. You can also call ahead and inquire. You can ask your question of the reference librarian on the phone, and they may be able to help you ballpark. Sometimes they can set up a Zoom session in terms of helping you a little bit more, but sometimes it's just a matter of helping you think through the search terms you're looking for.
Right.
I'll tell you, that is, everybody thinks that we are such geniuses, and we are, of course, being very humble, but the fact of the matter is, sometimes it is just about breaking down what you're looking for, maybe finding some different synonyms to describe the terms you're looking for. And I'll tell you what, sometimes people are really, really specific, and they'll include like a middle initial when maybe that wasn't how it was listed, and that middle initial is going to mess it up. So to answer your question, yes, there is someone in the reference staff who would be glad to be able to help you. Everyone always has a strength in terms of the reference department. Some folks are going to be better with searching this product. Some will be better at searching other products. But all reference librarians will be able to help you break down a search so that you can find it more successfully.
That's great. I thank you. I
Carol?
see we've got another question.
Sure.
Were there death notices in the Natick papers in the 1940s?
Yes, and actually, there just pops me back to another question. In the earlier papers, there's that little, if I was in the paper now, as you go through, especially papers up to about believe it or not, 1960, you could go through the paper and there's a section that says Natick News, South Natick News, some other neighborhoods news, and even Dover at some points, Felchville at some point. And within those columns, you find maybe like a half-inch piece, and that's where you'll often have to scan to find those death notices. Now, I will just add a little qualifier. Sometimes death notices can also look like an obituary, and vice versa. And sometimes they won't look like anything at all. They may be like so-and-so sends a card of thanks for the condolences that were sent or shared by. So you may not get an actual notification of the death, but you might see something that is close. And newspapers are really good if you're involved in any kind of family history. Oftentimes these early papers are a great place to find these little, like so-and-so had a birthday party for Dolly Wood, who is 6 years old, and you might find somebody's anniversary party, 50th anniversary party, and there might be a chain of who was there that might have been family members or close by neighbors or anything like that. Likewise, you can find columns from churches that will talk about church members. We had somebody looking for the history of, I'm really bad with names, right next to the town hall, the church, the St. Paul's Church. They were looking for the renovation. They had a new building and a new renovation, and they were looking for the history of that. Unfortunately, we were able to find some information in the papers. All of this came during the COVID when the library was shut. So one of us would have to sneak in to try to, do the fast search. And that's when this was before it was digitized. So it's just, I think COVID pushed the cart for everybody to be at home searching for history, whether it be family, institution, whatever. And who best to go to would be the Historical Society or the town library. And it's just with COVID, we were fortunate. The reference department was fortunate because we were busy doing virtual and digital branch stuff, and we were able to do a lot of things. But yeah, thank you so much. I so appreciate everybody's questions, and if you have other questions, please enter them in, and Fran or Terry can get the information to me, and I'm glad to see what I can find.
Thank you so much. This is absolutely fascinating. I know I'm going to sign off and then sign on and start doing a couple searches.
Good. That's exactly what we want.
Terrific. So
Yep.
Carol, on behalf of all of us, thank you so much and happy retirement. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
very
Thank you. There was one thing I wanted to just mention to somebody had an Albanian question, and if you just Google Mass Memories Natick, it should give you enough to link to the Mass Memories project where you'll get that information.
Mhm.
Yeah. So thank you again.
All right. And with that, we'll sign off. Thanks to all of you for joining us and happy holidays.
Thank you.